In the land of Aeloria, where towering mountains touched the heavens and ancient forests whispered forgotten secrets, twilight descended slowly upon the realm. The sprawling city of Eldorath, capital of a once prosperous kingdom, basked in the fading light of the setting sun. Its high stone walls stood firm against the surrounding wilderness, and its towering spires, tipped in gold, glistened in the dying rays of day. To the untrained eye, it was a day like any other, a peaceful moment in a world that had known little but turmoil. But within the depths of the world, something stirred. Far beneath the surface, in the shadowed halls of the long-abandoned dwarven kingdom of Kharûl, a pulse of ancient magic surged through the earth. The dormant veins of power, sealed and forgotten for millennia, awoke with a slow and deliberate hum, as if the very stone remembered the touch of a long-lost power. The Seal of Orathar had broken. For centuries, the seal had held back the wrath of an ancient force, one so powerful that even the gods of old had trembled at its coming. Orathar, an entity of chaos and destruction, had been imprisoned in the deepest caverns of Aeloria long before the rise of men. Bound by the sacrifices of the first mages, its malevolent essence was locked away, ensuring that the balance between light and darkness would remain. But no seal could hold forever, and as the runes of the ancient wards flickered and died, Orathar began to stir. A tremor shook the mountains, rippling out across Aeloria, subtle but unmistakable. The forests grew unnaturally silent, the birds falling mute as the wind carried a warning, a whisper of what was to come. The ground shifted, and deep in the heart of Eldorath, the city's mages felt it. A shiver ran down their spines, for they knew the ancient wards better than anyone. Something had changed. Aelin Thornblade pulled her hood tighter against the chilly night wind as she made her way through the crowded streets of Eldorath. The city buzzed with life, merchants haggling over wares, musicians playing lively tunes, and children chasing each other through the cobbled alleys. But Aelin paid them little mind. Her sharp green eyes darted toward every shadow, every corner where danger might lurk. She had not survived this long by being careless. As a mercenary, she was used to being on edge, but tonight felt different. The air itself seemed thicker, like the weight of the world was pressing down on her. She couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that something was wrong, something far beyond the usual dangers that accompanied her line of work. Aelin's hand unconsciously drifted to the hilt of her blade, the familiar coolness of the steel a small comfort. She reached the outskirts of the marketplace and slipped into a narrow alley, heading for the small, dimly lit tavern where she had arranged to meet her employer. The Weeping Griffin was not a place frequented by the city's nobility, but it suited Aelin just fine. The less attention she attracted, the better. As she stepped through the door, the smell of ale and roasting meat hit her. The tavern was sparsely populated, mostly by tired travelers and a few locals nursing their drinks. In the far corner, a hooded figure sat alone at a table, a half-empty mug in front of them. Aelin approached, her steps silent on the worn wooden floor. She slid into the chair opposite the figure, her eyes scanning the room before settling on the stranger. "Are you the one who sent for me?" she asked, her voice low but firm. The figure nodded, slowly pulling back their hood to reveal an older man with weathered features and silver-streaked hair. His eyes, however, were sharp and alert, betraying the wisdom of many years. "You're late," he said, his voice gravelly but not unkind. Aelin shrugged. "I had to make sure I wasn't followed." The old man leaned forward, his gaze intense. "Then you know what's at stake." "I know you're paying me a lot of coin for a simple job," Aelin replied, keeping her tone casual. "You want me to find something, right? A relic? An artifact?" "Not just any artifact," the man said, his voice lowering to a whisper. "The Seal of Orathar." Aelin blinked, her expression remaining neutral even as her mind raced. She had heard of the seal, of course, everyone had. It was the stuff of legends, a mythical object said to hold the power to imprison gods. But she had never believed it was real, and certainly not that someone would be foolish enough to seek it. "You don't believe me," the old man said, reading the doubt on her face. I believe you're serious, Aelin replied carefully. But what makes you think the seal is real? And why would you want it? The man hesitated for a moment before speaking. The seal has already been broken. Aelin's heart skipped a beat. If that's true, then we're all in more trouble than you can pay me to fix. That's why I need you, the man said, his eyes locking onto hers. The seal has been broken, but there's a way to repair it. A ritual, an ancient one, known only to a few. But it requires someone special. Aelin frowned. And that's where I come in. You were born under the blood moon, weren't you? Aelin's hand gripped the hilt of her blade instinctively. What of it? The prophecy speaks of a child born under a blood moon who will have the power to either restore the balance, or shatter it forever. Aelin leaned back in her chair, her mind spinning. Prophecies, ancient seals, gods of chaos, it all sounded like the ramblings of a madman. But there was something in the old man's voice, something in the way he spoke, that made her believe he wasn't lying. And if he wasn't lying, then the world was in far more danger than she had ever imagined. You're asking me to save the world? Aelin asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. I'm asking you to find the seal, the man corrected. And stop Orathar from rising. If he escapes his prison, there will be no world left to save. Aelin was silent for a long moment, her thoughts a whirlwind of doubts and fears. She had spent her life surviving on her own terms, fighting for herself and no one else. But this was something bigger. Something far beyond her. Finally, she sighed. I'll take the job. But you'd better be right about this. The old man nodded, relief washing over his face. I knew you would. The fate of Aeloria rests in your hands, Aelin Thornblade. The journey began the very next morning. Aelin, accompanied by the old man, who introduced himself only as Thalanor, set out from Eldorath toward the distant mountains where the ancient city of Kharûl lay buried. The dwarven city had once been the heart of a mighty empire, its underground halls filled with treasures beyond imagination. But after the fall of the dwarves, it had been abandoned, its secrets lost to time. As they traveled, Thalanor told Aelin more about the legend of Orathar, the god of chaos and destruction. According to the old tales, Orathar had once ruled the world in an age before men, elves, and dwarves had walked the land. His power was absolute, his will unyielding, and under his reign, the world was a place of endless war and suffering. It had taken the combined might of the first mages, the greatest sorcerers who had ever lived, to imprison him. They had forged the seal, binding Orathar's essence within the deepest caverns of Aeloria, and cast wards to ensure he would never escape. But the first mages were long gone, their knowledge scattered to the winds. Now, with the seal broken, it was up to Aelin to find the fragments of the ritual that could bind Orathar once more. And time was running out. The road to Kharûl was long and perilous. The terrain grew more rugged as they ascended the mountains, with jagged cliffs and thick forests blocking their way. Along the path, they encountered strange signs, animals that had been mutilated, their blood staining the earth in intricate patterns, and stones inscribed with dark symbols that Aelin did not recognize but felt in her bones. The air grew colder, more oppressive, and even the wind seemed to carry whispers of fear. They camped one night near the base of the mountain, their fire crackling weakly against the cold. Aelin stared into the flames, her thoughts heavy with the weight of what lay ahead. Thalanor sat nearby, silent and contemplative. The firelight flickered against his worn face, casting deep shadows in his eyes. What aren't you telling me? Aelin finally asked, her voice breaking the uneasy silence. Thalanor looked up, his expression unreadable. The seal, it wasn't just meant to imprison Orathar. It was meant to destroy him. Aelin frowned. Then why didn't it? Because the first mages didn't have the power to fully destroy him, Thalanor explained. They could only contain him. But there's something they didn't foresee. The longer he remains imprisoned, the stronger he grows. His power has been festering, growing more corrupt with every passing century. If he escapes now, he won't just return to the world, he will unravel it. Aelin's chest tightened. And you're just telling me this now? I didn't want to burden you with the full truth until I was sure you were ready, Valinor said softly. But you have to understand, Aelin, this is not just a fight to stop a dark god. This is a fight for existence itself. Aelin closed her eyes, the gravity of the situation sinking in. The fate of the world rested in her hands, and she wasn't even sure if she believed in the gods, let alone if she could stop one. But she had come this far, and she knew there was no turning back. The next morning, they continued their journey, climbing higher into the mountains. As they approached the entrance to Kharûl, the sky darkened unnaturally, and the air grew thick with the smell of sulfur. The entrance to the dwarven city loomed before them, an ancient stone archway carved with runes that pulsed faintly with forgotten magic. Aelin drew her sword, her heart pounding in her chest. Whatever awaited them inside Kharûl, she knew it would test her like nothing she had ever faced before.